Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Ashley Warren with Hughes Private Capital, and I am joined by Nate Edwards, who is our Senior Investment Advisor. Did I get your title right, Nate?
Yep. Yep.
I would also say you're kind of like our resident expert on real estate as part of a portfolio, like how to make the most out of real estate investments. You talk to a lot of different folks with a lot of different backgrounds about making the most of real estate.
Yeah, and the thing about it is I wouldn't consider myself an expert. I wish I was. I like to more phrase as like traveler of knowledge.
I like
But
that.
more than anything, a lot of it is just trying to understand experiences and aligning them with expectations. Real estate is a really unique experience, and in my purpose is just to kind of make sure that real estate stays within the same expectations, because real estate is a great performer in a lot of different markets and a lot of different cycles. But I mean, everyone says that. So when we talk about what specific real estate, that can mean a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah, well, and I know you've been talking a lot with people lately about, the headlines people are seeing about the economy and how kind of unpredictable and uncertain it is. What are people's main concerns that they're bringing to you?
Yeah, a lot of the time people are worried about inflation, right?
Mm.
That is the big headline news: inflation, rates going up. Federal Fund Reserve is or the Federal Reserve is raising their rates. People worry about rents. The cost to borrow money is higher as well, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong. These things have happened. It's kind of funny. It's almost like we had such a great environment the last 12 years that now we're seeing the other side of the economy. And what's important is how knowing to properly respond to it.
Right. And something that we have learned here just in the decade that we've been in real estate investing in many different forms is that like real estate really is a great long-term investment, but you really have to think of it as this thing you're committing to, for a lifetime because the economy is always going to go up and down.
Sure.
So how do you make decisions about it that aren't like reactionary? And something that you actually taught me about was the fear and greed index. Can you talk a little bit about like what that is and what that kind of represents?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, just to kind of answer your question, first off, the fear and greed index, it's one small metric that investors use to measure investors and analysts' view of the economy. Whether it mainly has to do with stocks and bonds, so it's not really a real estate focused kind of thing. But what it measures is how the movement in the market is going, how much people are investing, what's the volume people are actually doing transactions, what's the price that like the S&P and all these indexes are moving. And what they use all those different categories and those numbers to kind of measure how do people feel. Because a lot of times when prices change in the stock market, it's a lot of it is reactionary. And it has to deal with people's emotions. And the thing that's really important to know is that the economy is going to go up and down. That's just the nature of it. It's going to expand and contract. Right now, we're in a little bit of a contraction, but the important thing to note when it comes to like the fear and greed index is that real estate and investing in general, you're supposed to want to look at it over a 30-year timeline plus 30-year plus timeline. This, the environment of making $1 million tomorrow is not a reality. You have those few unicorn stories, but in reality, most people make their living off of getting that 6, 7, 8, 9% return over that 30-year timeline that actually builds that generational wealth that people often look for, or that financial freedom that they're looking for as well.
Right. And like you said, like it has been a pretty good few years in the economy. Like, yeah, we've had the COVID-19 pandemic, which definitely shook things up. But overall, like it's been, I think people have gotten kind of comfortable with how the economy was going and making decisions based off of that. And now I think people are kind of going the other way and they're worried about making kind of big moves with their
Yeah.
money. But they're kind of, I think, like you said, looking, 30 years into the future and making a choice about that. Like how how do you recommend people kind of change their mindset about what's going on right now and kind of maybe use this as a good opportunity to
Yeah,
make a choice?
a lot of it depends on what their timeline and their profile is. If you're someone who has a 5 year investment timeline, then yeah, you need to be very risk averse. You need to, if you want to go down the real estate route, now you want to go on something that's very secure, maybe not as high of yields, but you know you're gonna get your principal back. Is the longer timeline you have, the more risk you can take on. And right now, prices are softening to the point there's a lot of great buying opportunities. Where when we've heard it the last 3 years, like, man, everyone wishes they had, 10, 20 rentals. Everyone wishes they had a bunch of properties they can sell because it seemed like no one could lose. And the people who really won are the people who bought back in 2009, 2010, 2008. And now I'm saying that this is a very similar picture, but it's a similar, I think, opportunity where say, hey, this is a great buying opportunity in order to really get assets at a discount. And then over the 30-year timeline, you will make your money back in full, whether that's through cash flow, appreciation, or tax benefits. So it's a lot of it depends on what that particular person's looking for, but the mindset that a lot of people need to take on is now is the time to be greedy when everyone else is fearful, right? That's the old Warren Buffett saying. Be fearful when everyone's greedy and be greedy when everyone's fearful. Now people are fearful, and now is the time to actually get discounts on assets that will provide that wealth and that financial freedom that people are looking for.
Sure. And some of the things you touched on are what we would consider to be like kind of core principles of real estate investing, right? Like, finding real estate based on cash flow and, using debt and inflation to your advantage and some of the, tax benefits you talked about. Can you go into a little bit more detail about some of those principles and what you typically, advise people when you're talking with them?
Yeah. So when someone wants to look at an asset, I typically say, hey, there's a few things that you need to look at. You need to look at what the cash flow is or a cap rate, which typically is your net operating income. So what goes in your pocket over the purchase price. So that's the money that goes in your pocket. You look at your tax benefits. Usually that's a CPA kind of deal where they can give you specific numbers, but you figure out, do you want to take advantage of depreciation, bonus depreciation, interest expense if you leverage, good debt versus bad debt. I know right now getting the loan is very touch and go, as most people would call it, where rates are up. But there is still such a thing as getting good debt nowadays. Maybe we don't leverage up all the way to 90%, as some people have been trying to do, or all the way to 80%. Maybe we leverage up 30 or 40%. So, in being able to, as far as your last point or your first point with the some core principles, mainly what I look at is I look at what my end goal is and then work backwards from there. So if my end goal is, hey, I need a retirement cash flow, I need then from there I need to look at the assets that produce the most consistent cash flow and that keep my principal the best. If I'm in a growth phase, like, hey, I won't need this money for 5 to 10 years, but I need to grow a nest egg so that way when I do get to that point in time, I have a larger asset to then convert into a cash flow model. And then there are others where they need a mix of both. And that's where people use tools such as leveraging, 1031 exchanges, um, wholesaling, a lot of these different strategies. A lot of it depends on what investors' end goals are and walking them backwards from there. And that's what I really try to work on is there a good fit? What does that fit look like? And at the end of the day, how are you able to get the most out of your investment journey?
Sure. So, what would you advise just kind of, as a general like gem of wisdom to people who own real estate right now and aren't really sure how to move forward right now in this economy? What would you say to for them to kind of make the most of it?
Well, right now there's a few different things you can do. Um, or kind of the blessing, the curse of the internet is that there's so many different choices out there. You can do X, Y, and Z deal. You can go buy local property. Everyone tells you go get a duplex, multifamily, commercial, et cetera, et cetera. a lot of times, if you're looking to be exposed over a diversified portfolio, I usually recommend there's a lot of investment funds out there that can provide that value. Sometimes people look at private and public companies that provide that. A lot of them will have mixtures of industrial, commercial, well, it's the same thing, but and residential as well. And then from there, you're able to kind of expose yourself without having to buy a property all in cash just to make the numbers work. There's ways you can start in small chunks of, 20, 50, 80, 100,000 in order to get started without actually having to actively look, seek, and find a deal and know if you're making a right choice or not.
Sure. I think that's great advice. Are there specific aspects of real estate investing right now that you think are especially good opportunities for people to look into?
Yeah, there's a lot of great opportunities out there. So right now, what we're kind of, or what in general people are looking at is there's a lot of good opportunities in residential housing. There's good opportunities with triple net leases with commercial properties as well. A triple net lease essentially is that a person would purchase a commercial property and then the leasee would have a triple net lease where they would cover taxes, expenses, and things of that nature. And then a lot of it is just making sure that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. I think is my biggest thing to take away from it is that's what the real goal is because as we've seen with whole COVID and with the eviction moratorium, with industries going fully remote online, which has impacted the industrial or the commercial property industry, is to not, is the old adage, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I know everyone's heard that 1,000 times, but it's still true, and that's why funds and different vehicles will allow you to get to that place without having to actually be active in those decisions every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not putting your eggs in one basket is good kind of life advice, right?
Right. And I'm sure everyone's like, oh, I've heard that before 1,000 times, but how do I do that? That's usually the next question, right? And so that's when you find firms who are able to do that for you, where they already have all the different baskets and you just invest in different baskets. Or there's also public companies like public REITs that you can invest in as well that already have all the baskets for you. I would equate it similar to like almost like an index fund. And if you don't know what index fund, essentially it's like if you had a basket of all these different companies and you just bought the little pieces of all the big companies, that's exactly what funds and what public and private REITs do. So that's usually what I recommend because they have a proven methodology to it. And it takes you out of that active role and makes you more passive. And then you can go back to what you ultimately want to do, which is you're buying back time by investing, but doing what you want to do with your family, do your hobbies, X, Y, and Z.
Right. And that's really most people's goal with real estate investing, right? It's not so much, I mean, a lot of people are passionate about real estate investing specifically, but really the goal is to, build wealth and yeah, like you said, grow your time and focus on the other things in life. So I think those are some good criteria to look for in someone's next opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate all of the expertise you shared. I know you said you're not an expert, but I personally consider you an expert, a traveler, guide, I guess, our shepherd through real estate investing. For folks watching, if you're interested in learning more about all the topics that we talked about, we are going to be putting together some kind of small group coaching sessions with Nate here and other folks from our team. And we look forward to delving into these topics in more depth because we know there's a lot of information on the internet and a lot of just questions about what's going on. And we hope that we can kind of help point you in the right direction. But that's all we have for now. So thanks for watching.